This is InCamp Field Notes, quick conversations and the cliff notes, thoughts, and lessons that don't always make it to the big stories, but shape the way we hunt and see the outdoors. This is InCamp Podcast.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the InCamp Podcast. This is the first episode of InCamp Field Notes. I am here with Autumn McEntee. Is that right? Cool. I got it right. Yes. So this is going to be our version of Whitetail Brief. We're going to keep it short. If you like it, you're going to get to go back and listen to Autumn's full episode. So tune in. All right. So this is kind of going to be Autumn is a trapper, right?
Yep.
You're the PA trapper girl. So if I wanted to learn how to trap, what would be your first steps that you would recommend?
Well, my very first steps, and this is a little shameless plug, I would go to patrappers.com and find out what district I lived in, and then I would look into a trapper training school. The majority of our districts do put on a trapper training school, at least one every year. My district puts on 4 in several counties, but it's a great way to learn from a lot of different people. You get a lot of different perspectives. And you get a wide array of education on everything from trap prep, baits and lures to trapping for different species. And I think that's a great way to get your feet wet and just take a look at how everything goes without having to shell out the money to get the stuff and then go out and try it yourself if you don't have a mentor, until you're sure that it's something that you would like to pursue.
Yeah, that's really good advice. One thing that I always find when people say they want to get into hunting is the first question they ask is, what kind of gun do I buy, or whatever that happens to be. But there's so much more that you have to do before that.
Yes, there is.
Similar situation?
Yep, absolutely.
I'm assuming trapping is not like a cheap thing to get into. So some of these places, what kind of things can you learn at events like that?
You can learn about preparing your traps, why the differences between, if you choose to wax and dye your traps, or if you would prefer to paint them or speed dip them. You learn about all kinds of baits and lure. The bait and lure market is pretty vast. There's lots and lots of options. And a big part about trapping is personal preference. So what you choose or what you like may not be the same as what somebody else likes. That doesn't make it wrong or make you a bad trapper. I mean, you made a bad choice. So it can seem really overwhelming because there's lots of different sizes of traps, different brands of traps, different baits, different lures for all the different species, different ways to anchor your traps. So there's quite a bit to navigate, and it looks pretty overwhelming when you start out. But to have folks there who are already set in their ways to mentor you through that day of education, make it a little bit easier and help you see that there's not as much to go through as you may think. But you get to learn about most of the time you rotate through different stations. They'll teach you about fox trapping, coyote trapping, mink and muskrat, raccoon. Some schools they'll teach you about fisher, bobcat, and otter. Some of the schools offer, like I said, about a trap prep course, as well as teaching about bait and lure and fur handling.
That's awesome. So when you're moving away from just the beginning steps, when you're thinking about animals that you want to trap, are you thinking about the animal you want to trap or the area? What is your target for, this is what I want to do and this is where I want to do it?
Are you talking about me personally or just like a broad spectrum?
Why don't you give it from your perspective?
Okay, so the area that I live in, well, I'm in central Pennsylvania, not quite in the red fox belt, just a little bit above it. We've got a mix of reds and gray foxes. We've got coyotes, we've got fishers, porcupines are moving into the area. We've got a wide array of wildlife here. I live just a couple minutes from the Susquehanna River, so I've got opportunities to trap beavers out there. In the next management unit up from me, you can trap otters. So I live in an area where I've got a lot of diversity and a lot of options, which I'm very grateful for. I love to water trap. especially for coons and beavers and mink and muskrats. So, and I live near a lot of water, which is pretty beneficial. It saves me on gas. Um, but in this area, we do have a lot of raccoons. We have a fair amount of beavers. Like I said, I live pretty close to the river, and off of the river are all of the tributaries, which are home to mink and muskrat. Um, I have to travel a little bit to get to better fisher country, but there's bobcat right over the mountain. There's coyotes
Wow.
and red fox and gray fox right over the mountain. So, um, but when I'm looking for an area to trap a specific fur bear, your water fur bears, and you would obviously you'd have to look for sign to figure out where they are in your rivers or creeks or ponds. Um, then for the bobcats and the gray foxes and even the fishers, I'm looking for rockier mountain areas with lots of evergreen trees and thermal cover. And then for your red fox and your coyotes and even your coons, skunks, and possums, they're looking for agricultural fields, especially those that border water for those raccoons.
Mm. So what I'm gathering is it is more of a stay versatile as far as the animal goes, but really hone in on the areas that you would prefer to hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. Because your area will tell you what you have available to you, and you can't trap the animals if they're not there. So if
Yeah.
you are setting for gray foxes in a cornfield that has no gray fox habitat anywhere around, you're probably not going to catch a gray fox.
Yeah.
But if you're setting for coyotes or red fox there, you're more likely to catch those critters.
What do you think the biggest difference is in the different species that you trap? Are you catching things on the same lures, or do you have to really vary your trap set by the animal that you're hunting?
Well, it all depends on the time of year. It depends on if there's a good food source nearby. Like for instance, I trap near I trap for a farmer that has turkey barns. Well, the farmer throws out the turkey carcasses, and then if I've got a set outside the turkey barn, and the foxes and coyotes are coming in every night to feed off of the carcass pile outside the barn,
Mm.
and say they pick up a turkey in their mouth, and they're walking away, and they look, and then they smell my dirt hole set, and there's food lure in there. They're probably not going to drop the whole turkey they've got to check out the
Yeah.
food lure that I've got that hole. But if
Mm-hmm.
I've got gland lure in there, or if I've got urine, or if I've got a curiosity or something that's going to pique their interest other than food in that scenario, that's going to up my chances of catching their attention and having them work the set.
Yeah, I never thought of it from that perspective. Quite honestly, I've never really trapped. I know there's foxes behind me on either side here, but that's predator hunting. Is that something you do as well? Do
Yep.
you hunt predators at night?
Yep.
So is that a huge difference from trapping as far as learning where the animals are? Or you kind of just, what's your go-to for that?
So it's not a huge difference. It does, I feel, give me some more insight about, the number of animals that are in the area, as
Mm-hmm.
well as where they're traveling and how they're using um, the land that I'm on. Because, you know, if you're on a stand calling for red fox and um, you can see how they use, if you're bordering woods, you can see what trails they use to come out of the woods. Or if they run away from you, if you spook them, you can see how they go into the woods and that kind of stuff. So it gives you more intel and would make you a better trapper to be a predator hunter as well, because they're inhabiting the same places, cow pastures and agricultural fields with cut corn. Um, so yeah,
Do you prefer trapping over the hunting part of it?
yes, I do. Predator hunting is really exciting. I love to predator hunt, but there's nothing to me that's as exciting as trapping. So
That's cool. When you're predator hunting, are you using night vision or thermal imaging or anything like that?
nope, nope.
Old school red light?
Oh yeah,
Very nice.
yeah.
Are you pretty successful?
When I get to go out, I like to think that I do a pretty good job when I get to go out. I don't go out very often. Um, just because I don't have a lot of properties that I have set aside
Uh-huh.
that I don't trap or that somebody else
Uh-huh.
doesn't predator hunt.
Uh-huh.
Um, but you know, I do enjoy predator hunting when I'm able to, but it's not super often.
So something that you said about using, like on the turkey farm, like maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to use a food lure. How much learning is there involved in learning about scents and lures and baits, or
So
when to use one over the other?
so there's not so much learning about the baits as it is about the animals and how
Uh-huh.
they're gonna perceive what you're using. So bait and lure makers, they'll tell you there's four pretty main categories of your baits and lures. You've got food based, gland based, you got urine, and then curiosity, which curiosity can be anything from mink glands to skunk essence, whatever they've put in there to make it real interesting, to make it maybe something that they haven't really smelled before,
Uh-huh.
um, so that they're curious and that they'll work your set. So
That makes a lot of sense.
it's learning that canines are territorial, just like your dog when you take them on a walk and they pee on a fire hydrant. Well, other dogs in the neighborhood when they go on walks will come along and also pee on the same fire hydrant. So if you're using urine at the set, like get a urine post set, or even if you dribble some on the back of your backing at a dirt hole, um, foxes and coyotes that work that set are going to come up and do the same thing, and that's when you'll catch them by the back foot because they're urinating on the backing of your set. Um, and your gland lures are going to be attractive, especially during the mating season. And then your food lures are going to be really attractive when it's a real cold winter, um, and they are having problems getting food, whether it's because the ground's frozen, maybe there's been a lot of snow. That can be a time when food lures are really successful. But like during when it's real warm out and they've got a lot of selections and there's a good rabbit population and um, they don't have any trouble getting food, they might not be as willing to go for that food lure alone. Now, if you combine a food lure with a urine, that might spark their interest. If you combine a food lure
Uh-huh.
with a gland, that could also spark their interest. But a lot of trappers will well, something I usually, whenever I catch red fox, I'll put a red fox foot down the dirt hole if I'm trying to catch a coyote,
Uh-huh.
which I don't do super often. I'm not a big canine trapper. I do prefer to trap in the water, but I do. I've it's growing on me, so I'm
Uh-huh.
learning. But I'll put a red fox foot down the hole because that smells like another canine, and the canines are territorial, so they'll
Hmm.
go up and investigate.
That's very that's this is one thing that I love about trappers is, like I said, I'm mostly a deer hunter, but I do a lot of, like, I fish, I do all different kinds of things in the outdoors, like, and I love turkey hunting and hunting pheasants and whatever. I think the one cool thing about trappers is how intimately they need to know where the animal is, right? I have to be 20 yards from a deer when I'm bow hunting, or 50 yards from a turkey when I'm hunting with a shotgun, or I can shoot a bird at 40 yards when I'm out with my dog, or I can predator hunt and shoot a fox at 280 yards. But something that's so interesting about trappers is they have to be where the animal steps, and they have to know why and what would make the animal want to step there.
Yep.
So I think that part is so cool to me. So we're almost at the end of our field note here, but for the part of the end result is that you come home with a fur. So I actually listened to one of your other podcasts to, kind of to hear a little bit about what you had to say. And I admire that you don't, like, the fur market is not really like why you do it. Like,
Yeah.
obviously you could probably make a couple bucks off furs. It's not enough to make a living off of probably anymore. Like it used to be. So what is something that you enjoy about the fur? And then what about the process? Is it a long process to flesh out or cure your furs?
Um, I enjoy that the fur is a renewable resource. It's sustainable. I can
Mm-hmm.
tan it, and I can well, I can't tan it. I don't tan my own stuff. I send it out to get tanned, but I can get it tanned, and it can come back to me. and the options are pretty much as capped at where my wallet stops. Like, I could save up a bunch of tan red fox pelts and get a coat made. I could get mittens made. I could get a queen size quilt for my bed made. I could have fur mittens made. I could have a quiver made out of one pelt, which are really cool. If you check out R&R Trading Post on Instagram, they've got a ton of cool fur stuff. I could get a teddy bear made. I could get fur earmuffs, which I do have. I've got fur beanies. I've got fur scrunchies. I've got 2 fur coats. I'd really like to get a beaver vest made, and a gray fox vest because I think they're beautiful. I have not caught a gray fox yet, though. That is my bucket list fur bear.
Okay.
You could use and if you learn how to sew with fur or leather, then you can use your scraps to tie flies to catch trout. You can do a whole bunch of stuff with your fur, and the best part is that it's a renewable resource. It's not plastic, and you've done something good, and you get something good out of it. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's not money. And the process, it all depends on the animal that you're processing. Like a muskrat, wonderful. You can skin and flesh a muskrat in well under an hour, and then just put it up. I use basswood stretchers. Some people prefer wire, but I think wood stretchers stretch nicer pelts. That's really easy. Even a mink you can do in under an hour. I really take my time with my stuff, and a coon as well. But when you get into talking about beaver, that's a whole different story. Beaver are a whole process within themselves, and especially because I like to beaver meat is delicious. So
Yeah, I heard
we
that.
started saving the carcass as well. So that adds a whole nother step to the process.
Right. Keeping it clean and making sure that you're taking care of the meat too.
Yep. But I mean, just skinning a beaver alone is a tougher process because typically with most animals, you're doing what's called case skinning, which you'll hang them up by the back feet and then wring the ankles, and then start pulling down, and they'll eventually end up like sort of like like a sock almost.
Yeah.
But beavers typically, you'll what's called open skin them. So you'll lay them on their back, and you'll start at the chin and make an incision down to the base of the tail, and ring around the tail and ring around all of the feet, and then you kind of just start peeling out this way. They're laying on their back in a trough, and then the part that probably takes the longest is nailing the beaver to a board, because since they're so large, and since they're open skin, they'll come out like an oval. Then you have to nail them, and you have to stretch them over a beaver board. And beaver boards are really big sheets of plywood that have stenciled ovals on them, so you can kind of follow a line to make sure that you're even while you're nailing the beaver to the board. But it involves lots of nails. You have to make sure that you're not stretching the beaver too much, but you're stretching the beaver just enough that you're even in your oval so that it dries really nice. And then you have to take all those nails out of the board. Take your beaver off. But beavers are the most time consuming. I think beaver and coyotes are up there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's very interesting. So this has been the InCamp Field Notes with Autumn McEntee. Check her out. If you enjoyed this episode of InCamp Field Notes, tune into episode 38 on InCamp Podcast, airing December 9th.